One nuclear weapon.
This edition of Global Update promises to be an interesting one, as different issues from Africa will be discussed, such as sit-tight syndrome of some African leaders. Also, children born of women raped during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi share experiences, challenges, and trauma. My name is Oyeyemi Ajayi. Welcome to Global Update. Chadian President Idriss Deby Itno is seeking to extend his 3-decade-long rule, running for a 6th time in the oil-producing Central African nation that is home to nearly 500,000 refugees and also plays a prominent role in the fight against Islamic extremists in the Sahel. Deby, a former army commander-in-chief, first came in power in 1990 when his rebel forces overthrew the then President Hissène Habré, who was later convicted of human rights abuses at an international tribunal in Senegal. Deby also continued to win re-election over the years, last drawing 61.5% of the votes as 2016 election. In 2018, the country approved a new constitution that allows Deby to run for 2 more 6-year terms. The landlocked nation of Chad is home to nearly 500,000 refugees from neighboring Sudan, Nigeria, and Central African Republic. Another 330,000 Chadians are internally displaced, the majority in the volatile Lake Chad region where Boko Haram militants are active. Now, Somalian parliament votes for extension of President Farmajo's term. Somalia's lower house of parliament had voted to extend the president's term by 2 years. 149 legislatures backed this proposal. The resolution also ordered the Election Commission of Somalia to hold new elections in under 2 years. Under Somali law, the proposal has to be voted on by the upper house of parliament. In a message via his Twitter handle, President Mohamed Abdullah Farmajo welcomes the parliament's decision to return power to the Somali people. The latest round of talks to resolve Somalia's election impasse collapsed last Wednesday as the federal government blamed leaders of Puntland and Jubaland regional governments for the failure. President Farmajo's term officially ended on February 8, but this development is likely to be rejected by the opposition, which has accused Farmajo of deliberating frustrating the election process to extend his rule. Joining us for discussion today is Mkpa Oju Uka, a UK-based political scientist and global affairs analyst. You're welcome to Global Updates.
It's good to have me. Thank you.
Let's go straight. For some time now, some African countries are seen extending the tenure of their presidents, with some going to the extent of tilting the constitution to their favor. These some have referred to the sit-tight syndrome. Now, do you also share the same view?
It's really sad about the reference made to African leaders in terms of sitting in power. The desire for power and self-preservation is unbelievable. And sometimes they want to extend their stay. They go as far as derogating the constitution. And what I mean by that is compelling the parliament to change the constitution that has existed for decades, and you know, it's quite unbelievable. And when you compare that to the United States or the United Kingdom, who are like role models, I think it's quite sad, because elected presidents have an obligation to spend maximum of 8 years, and they should be out of power, and there should be a new government to see to the affairs of the country. And for African leaders, that's different. For me, that is very sad.
And let's look at it. Why does these come up in Africa, especially?
I think it's a failure on the part of the country. What I mean by that is, for you to continue to sit in power, and for you to go as far as changing the constitution, that automatically involves the parliament. So the parliament has a responsibility there to say, no, we cannot change this constitution. There is a process of changing it. And if they insist on that, then automatically the president cannot get an approval to continue sitting in power. So that is where I think the problem lies. The parliament themselves, the lawmakers, what they have to do in terms of making sure that the president doesn't continue to stay. We pride that we are following their footsteps, that they have institutions, a political system that has been existing for some time, and that is where we are learning from. That is a step we are taking, having them as role models. So for them to deviate, I mean, look at what is happening in Omar Bashir of Chad was forced out of office. Blaise Compaoré, after dictatorship, became a democratic president. He was also forced out of office due to violent protest. And then down the line, look at Paul Biya. He's been there he's so frail, but he's still sitting on the seat. And then look at Mugabe. Mugabe, it was like a coup. He was just respected because he's an elder statesman, and so on and so forth. Equatorial Guinea in Guinea, he's been there for ages. So and then we talk about Chad. It's quite unbelievable why they want to sit on there. I think for me it's about the mindset, the idea of coming in as a dictator and then becoming a democratic president. And within you as a dictator, you believe you can continue to dictate the affairs of the state, which is completely wrong. Because in a democratic system of government, there is a process. There is respect for the rule of law. There is respect for the electorate. There is also respect for the constitution. Whilst all these things doesn't exist in a dictatorship. So they bring the idea of governance, of rulership, as dictators into a democratic system, and that is total chaos.
Now, some of these leaders have talked about consolidation of projects as reasons for seeking or extending tenures. Does that sync well with you?
That's unacceptable. We go by what the law says. For instance, if we bring that home to Nigeria, the Constitution says if you're a president of Nigeria, you have maximum of 8 years, and you can no longer be president. You need to step aside. Your party continues to exist in most cases, but it mustn't be you. So when you say you've done some good works, does that empower you to change the Constitution to remain in power? So automatically you are raising yourself above the law. You are no longer following the democratic process that brought you to power. You are now taking the step of a dictator, which is unacceptable. If the sit-tight idea or concept continues to exist in Africa as it is existing now, then democracy has failed. Because democracy, it's a political system that establishes the beliefs and the values, what has to be respected, what needs to be done. You are taking the electorate for granted. They voted you into power on the premise that you've got 8 years to spend. So you've got 8 years to do your work. And then if you fail to finish the work you're doing, you have to leave it for the next government, the next president to take over from you. You cannot come and tell the electorate, listen, I've got so much work to do. Please, can I change the constitution? It's unbelievable. So for me, if they carry on the sit-tight syndrome, which has plagued African leaders sadly, then democracy has failed. And I think that's the way the Western world sees it, that we are failing our democracy, in as much as we are not respecting what the political system says or what the rule of law says, which obviously defines democracy. The idea of covering up their tracks and corruption is just about the same reason, because when you get corrupt, you want to cover up your tracks in that. So it is the responsibility of our leaders to lead us well, to borrow a leaf from the Western world, to realize that they are there to serve the people, and the people need to enjoy the dividends of democracy. They need to have that at the back of their mind. Of course, things are not going to be perfect, but you need to do your best. When you do your best, you don't need to panic about going out of power. You don't need to panic about stepping aside as a leader. I think to a great extent that affects, that has been responsible for the desire to extend powers. You know, having committed, you know, one corruption or the other. Maybe you've done things you shouldn't do properly and you couldn't amend it. Then you want a situation whereby the more you continue to stay, the more you're able to cover up yourself until you feel, well, if you are left there, maybe you'll be there forever. You know. So for me, that's responsible, and we, you know, African leaders need to consider that during their tenures in office.
All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. It's good to have me. Thank you.
All right, now from here we go straight on a short break. We'll be right back.
This is NTA News 24. Communication technologies allow the free flow of information to and from one source and another. Are these sources authentic? If the sources are not verifiable, then it's fake news. Don't share, don't kill. Fake news kills. This message is brought to you by NTA News 24.
Now, welcome back. The program is still Global Update, where we talk about different issues around the globe in the course of the week. Now, the first group of at least 9,800 Nigerian refugees have been repatriated from neighboring Cameroon. Here's the story.
The solemnity of the voluntary departure of Nigerian refugees after a 7-year sojourn at the Minawao camp was given by the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji, on the 8th of March 2021 in the presence of officials of the UN Refugee Agency and the Governor of Borno State of Nigeria. On the occasion, the member of government was also bearer of a huge relief package from President Paul Biya to the refugees. This 6th contingent of 750 also benefited from the head of state's largesse under the supervision of the governor of the Far North region.
The head of state decided to accompany them and also to hand over material to enable them to carry out their daily basis work in their countries.
On behalf of the happy recipients of truckloads of household utensils and food items at the border locality of Banki, authorities of Borno State showered praises and gratitude to President Paul Biya and spouse for the love and care.
All these refugees will now not go into a tent or a camp, but their house of permanent residence.
Stocks of similar relief assistance are on standby for the last contingent expected to leave in the days ahead.
Now, as part of the 2021 Spring Assemblies of the IMF and the World Bank, a high-level meeting on CEMAC have been held via video conference.
The experts of the monitoring unit of the Economic and Financial Reform Program of CEMAC met ahead of CEMAC ministers' meeting. It was an occasion to examine what has been achieved so far and strategize on future endeavors. The president of the follow-up unit of the Economic and Financial Reform Program, Antoine Ngakanyi, lauded member countries of CEMAC for putting up resilience and a riposte plan nationally against the propagation of the coronavirus pandemic. This, he said, was possible with the assistance of the financial and technical partners. He noted that at the commemoration of the 12th edition of the PREF CEMAC Day, President Paul Biya, who was sitting president of the heads of state, said the putting in place of the economic and financial program of CEMAC permitted the re-establishment of the fundamental equilibrium and that the financing of integrated projects is going smoothly.
On to our next story. Launched in April 2017, Connect My School is an innovative project that consists of providing internet access to children in 2 pilot schools located in isolated areas of the far north of Cameroon. One near the town of Mokolo, where many Cameroonian children displaced by the conflict have found refuge, and the other at the Minawel site, which hosts Nigerian refugees. This project, carried out in partnership with private sector and financed by the European Union, has enabled the installation of vast transmitter powered by 2 solar panels, giving schools access to the internet by satellite.
This is the e-container made up of a technical office and an ICT laboratory, all equipped with computers, laptops, PCU and solar energy. The building will be used to exchange ideas to improve access to quality primary and secondary education through ICT in classrooms in the urban and rural areas.
It's particularly important not only to improve the quality of learning, but also to improve the teaching methodology.
An initiative of the Ministries of Secondary and Basic Education in collaboration with UNICEF.
We give a particular importance in allowing children to be connected to the entire world through internet. They are guided by the teachers that have been trained.
We want to thank UNICEF and Ministry of Basic Education to choose our school to implement this initiative to connect my school.
They have as objective to construct the e-containers in all the 10 regions of the country to facilitate online studies during the COVID-19 period.
In Rwanda, children born of women who were raped during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsis say although their upbringing was difficult, as time goes by, life is getting better as they continue to hear from their childhood.
The names of the characters in this report have been altered to protect their identities. When I remember that no one is left on both my mother and father's sides, I feel so much pain and sorrow. She says those who killed her family also raped her when she was 25 years old, at that time during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and later found out she was pregnant. We were raped. There was no one to call on for help. I discovered later that I was pregnant and I couldn't tell who the father was. When the time came, I gave birth. This woman, who is now visually impaired, says during the first years she didn't love her child. This is something her child affirms as well. I never played with my child like normally parents would play with their babies. Never did I feel that way in my heart. Her child, whom we named Kazungu, is now almost graduating at 27 years of age. He says his mother's hatred was due to the way he was conceived, and it was obvious to him. He says he was often lied to by his mother each time he asked her about his origin. Each time I asked her who my father was, She would tell a name of my uncle, to a point when I had to fill in school forms in primary. On the part where I had to write my father's name, she would come up with different names every term, and I finished primary with about 12 different names of my father. He says he finally got to know about his origin after his mother told him. His mother says she is proud of what her son has achieved so far, despite the upbringing amidst difficult times. One of my achievements is being an excellent student in school, because if I'd focused on my background, then it would have distorted me, since I don't have a father to do or to say anything to me in case I perform poorly. This also happened to a one Diana and her mother, who says she was also raped multiple times during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. She explained how she later discovered that she was pregnant. That family was full of Interahamwe from the first to the last born. They were all educated and well known up to this moment, if I could mention their names. From them, that's why I had whispers that I'm pregnant. I realized it later on. The thing all these children have in common is the pain of constantly being lied to by their parents about their origin at an early age. As we know, when a child starts school, he or she is often asked about his or her parents or where they come from. During all that time, my mom had never told me anything of that. As I continued to grow up, I kept on asking her who my father was, and she kept on telling me that she shall tell me someday. As I kept insisting, she told me that my grandfather's name. Although after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, their parents and the rest of the family members didn't love them, after they healed from the traumas, they began to be grateful they're alive and proud of what they had become. A coordinator of Sevota, Godeliva Mukasarasi, one of the organizations that were established shortly after the genocide against the Tutsi with the purpose to care for the genocide survivors, says that women who suffer from such trauma are treated and they do heal from it. We are happy to see them recover from their traumas, although they never go away completely, but they manage to control them. As they live well with the society and the relationship with their children also keeps getting better. They've also managed to contribute to the development of the country without constantly suffering from mental or other diseases like before, and they are now involved in many sectors. The Sevotha organization has managed to treat over 400 women with such traumas, with 100 still recovering. Experts in the history of genocide say that rape is one of the most powerful weapons which were used during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and that those who were victims of rape require to be treated with greater discretion.
Now let's take a look at some major stories of the week.
A colorful reception for members of parliament and delegates by a young female group set the tone for the opening of the ECOWAS Parliament meeting of Joint Committee on Social Affairs, Gender and Women Empowerment, Education, Science and Culture, as well as that of Health in Monrovia, Liberia. Speaker Sidi Mohamed Tunis pledged the commitment of the ECOWAS Parliament to prioritize gender equality and women's empowerment in the framework of the regional integration process.
We must remain aware that it is our responsibility as legislators and politicians to promote and protect legal and policy frameworks that not only prevent and combat all forms of discrimination against women, but also promote their empowerment.
I'm deeply dedicated and committed to the ideas of the empowerment of women in all aspects of our society, but particularly in leadership.
For the wife of the President of Liberia, Mrs. Claire Ware, the most pressing need on the road to women empowerment in Africa is a lasting solution to end all forms of violence against women and girls.
To ensure that every woman and every female in our region has access to all she needs to ensure that she fulfills her potential and contributes to the development of our society.
The ongoing meeting of the Joint Committee with the support of experts will enable members of Parliament to review the legal framework, compare their experiences and existing institutional systems in order to highlight the obstacles to women's empowerment and propose measures for implementation by Parliament and other institutions of ECOWAS.
And that's it on this edition of Global Update. Join us for more interesting stories next time on the global scene. My name is Oyeyemi Ajayi. Bye for now.